Well, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Caregivers. Some of you may know my name is Irene Clements, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Foster Parent Association. I've had a long history with the NFPA. When I was thinking about how to start our very first event, I thought about a coffee mug that I've had since the early 1980s. And I wanted to share it with you. I have my coffee in it. Here it is. And there are 5 awesome people. I'm in the middle. Myself and the lady to my right, the way I'm seeing it, Cora White, both eventually became the president of NFPA at various times. But what this is significant is that this was taken at a banquet at one of our NFPA conferences in early 80s. And the 5 people on this cup, after a lot of discussion over a couple of years, decided that we really needed a council of state affiliates to better represent each of the states and our kind of individualized needs. Although foster care is much the same and everywhere, it's also very different everywhere. And that one of the ways we felt NFPA would be more effective was to hear more directly from each of the states that had active foster parent associations to better help represent the needs of our families. So that's what this cup is about. I hope you all have a favorite cup. You probably have many. I know I had to go sort through some to pick one of my favorites. And they're favorites for a lot of reasons. This one is a favorite because it reminds me of 27 years we actively fostered, of the foster parents who truly became lifesavers for our family on many occasions, who celebrated joy with us and celebrated sorrow with us, helped us get through wanting to quit many times, and helped us by becoming foster parents too, you know? So my goal for Coffee with Caregivers is to just spend some time with you each week, and it won't be a lot of time, but some time with you each week, talking about the things that are important to you. And I'll bet you they are the same things that were important to me. And I hope we can help each other figure out some ways to make life better for everybody involved. And that's every person in your family. Because what we ultimately want for every family in this country is not just safety, but it's well-being too, being well, being happy, being functional, being supported. We all deserve that. Every human being deserves that. So how do we make that happen for all of our caregiver families in the system? And then how do we make it happen for the families that these kids rejoin oftentimes? And that should certainly be our goal. But how do we make all that happen when sometimes every day becomes so incredibly difficult that you just don't know if you can do this one more minute? Well, I can tell you, you can. You can. So that's kind of the reason that we have looked at having this program. We want caregivers across the country to know that we're available. We want to hear from you. We have a 1-800 number. We have info@nfpaonline.org email address. We want to know what you're thinking. We want you to communicate with your state association so they know what you need and what you're thinking. They can best represent you in your state. NFPA can best represent all foster caregivers across the country on a national level and help the states be more accomplished, hopefully, in how they can be effective within their own states and counties. We want to talk about struggles. We want to talk about what works. We want to talk about maybe what doesn't or hasn't and why. I'd like to give you some kind of, pointers sometimes about how I got through to the next day and then went on to the next child to join our family. I want us to talk some over the next few weeks and months about strength-based language and how we talk about the people that we work with every day, and particularly the children and their parents. How we can be change agents in order to make whatever has to happen in foster care more positive in the public's eye, so we get more support. And the why. Well, for me, the why became fairly simple. And it was not because it was, my calling. Oh, I had, believe me, experience that definitely told me this is what God wanted me to do. Maybe someday I'll tell you about that, but it's the why in each of us. When you go through pre-service training in your application process, you're almost always asked, what's your motivation for this? Why do you want to be a foster parent? Why do you want to care for other people's kids? They're looking to make sure that, it's a good motivation that you have, that you're not looking to hurt children or anything like that. Well, motivations start out strong, but then when times get tough, they oftentimes start to kind of fade away. And we forget maybe what drove us to want to care for other people's children and make life better for them, make a difference for a lifetime for many children. The importance of family, the importance of keeping your family well during this process. The one thing I did learn very, very quickly is that if I didn't have well-being myself, if I wasn't feeling happiness, if I wasn't feeling some joy, if I wasn't able to laugh at funny things and even sometimes the not so funny, even sometimes the gross, then I wasn't being able to give the best of myself to somebody else. And I was trying to do that every day, not just to my husband and my children, but to those children who joined our family. And they deserve the best of me. They deserve the best of each of you. You can make it that way, but it's up to you how you approach what you do every day, how you talk to the people and work with the people who are there to support you. And if they're not there doing their job, then how do you go about getting them to do it? Sometimes you get in trouble, right? Sometimes you get in trouble when you stick up for your kids, no matter what. But I always felt like if I'm not going to do it, then who is? And there are two quotes that have stuck with me for a long time. One, since I heard it, which wasn't all that long ago, in honesty, from a dear friend. Her name is Ronna Scortino, and she was in foster care for years. And what she says to me one day was, Irene, you know what foster parents do? They practice radical hospitality. And that really struck me, radical hospitality, because that's what you do when you open your home, your family, your life, everything becomes laid out to many people the minute you get a license to be a foster parent. You are practicing radical hospitality. You are unique, you're special in many ways, and yet you're just ordinary like the rest of us, doing the best we can from what we believe it is right thing to do. And then there's another quote by Vera Fahlberg, who's wrote a lot about child development and that sort of thing, and I hope you've read some of her work. But she said, every child deserves an irrational advocate. And they do. And when they don't have that irrational advocate as their parent, then you have the privilege and the honor of becoming that irrational advocate when they join your family. And again, I think it's up to us to do the very best we can in each of those situations. when we talked about how we were going to do this show, we decided that we were going to record the first few at least until we can get a feel for how it goes, until I can feel a little bit comfortable with doing this on my own. And then certainly we'll invite some guests as well, because you don't want to listen to me all the time, that's for sure. But to get us started, we ask you to send us some questions that you might like to have us start with. And you did that. So I'm going to ask Sean Johnson, who is the magic behind all of this, to put some questions up that came in during the week that we've advertised this, and to see if we can kind of talk about some of the things that are on there. We'll touch on some things. We won't go in depth because we don't have time to go in depth, but we'll touch on some things, and then we'll kind of look for your responses after the show and let us know what more do you want to know on those topics. And also then what topics in addition do you want to talk about? And then we can prepare for next week's show. Again, till we get a feel for this, we'll do some recordings and then we'll go live. So Sean, are you at a point where you could put a question up for us? Hey, there you go. The magic of computers, right? So are there any healthy or creative videos or screen ideas to work with teens while being sequestered? Whoa. I know that one of the items that we're going to share with you is that there will be a webinar hosted by the Child Welfare League of America coming very soon, and we're going to give you information on that. The gentleman who will be leading this webinar is Marcus Stallworth. Marcus happens to be a member of the board of directors of the NFPA. So I want you to know that the work he does is just outstanding. He has presented on this topic at several of our annual education conferences and is always revising his material to be as up to date as possible. And I know he's going to have some creative ideas about how do you work with teens so that they're just not always on their phone or another electronic device or playing a game, but that they're beginning to understand that there's time to talk to people, to eyeball them, look face to face, right? Eye to eye, talk with their parents, and do some fun stuff as well. And I think that this COVID-19 situation has really kind of made a difference on that, because we are hearing from families as they call in and send in some emails about how even their teenagers who they couldn't get their attention before, right, would rather miss a meal than get off of a game. Rarely raise their eyes at the table to look at who was with them, if they even get the kids at the table, that kind of thing, are now sitting down and enjoying family meals together because they can. And you know, I want to emphasize here that I think part of that is because the parents aren't on their electronics all the time either. So, you know, I think we're learning some lessons that we're saying the kids just don't. They don't want to do this. They want to be on that thing all the time. I can't get them to sit at the table to eat. Well, wow. You know, I didn't have a choice growing up. My kids didn't have a choice. Now, granted, they didn't have all these electronics, but family time around the table was a really important time if we could do it. And we did it most of the time. But I think that, you know, I find myself now less on my phone and Facebook and all those things and my laptop than I was before this. And I think we're all looking at things a little bit differently in life. And I hope that continues through this. But I know that one resource for sure that will show you about how to find ways to manage the use of electronics and various devices with your teenagers will be really beneficial to you. Sean, you got another question for us? Oh boy, self-care without so much guilt. This really hits home to me. So let me tell you a little story. We usually had 6 children at all the time. Our house was always full. And so that kind of became the norm. And we rarely said no to any child that was presented to us, regardless of their needs. We felt like we had something to offer, and we sure could learn a lot that might help us not only with that child, but with the next kids. And we had church pictures made one year. In our church, they did it every 5 years. And so the pictorial directory was time. And so we dressed everybody up, and went to the church to have the pictures professionally made. And the girls all had, red on, and the boys had blue. And my husband just looked so handsome. The kids were spit polished. And when we got those pictures, 8 by 10s, I was just thrilled because the kids were beautiful. My husband was handsome, And so when our foster home development worker came to see us after we got that picture, I couldn't wait to show it to her. And so I brought it out. It was in a frame. I brought it and I said, "Oh, Kathy, you just have to look at this. Isn't it wonderful?" Well, she looked at it and she said, "Irene, the children are thriving. Bill's just as cute as he can be. But you, quite frankly, look like hell." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" She said, "Have you looked at yourself in this picture?" I said, "Well, I don't know if I really have or not." She said, "Look at yourself." So she handed the picture back to me. And I really looked at myself. I was appalled. My hair was sticking out all over the place. I had huge, deep bags under my eyes. There was no sparkle there. Really no smile. I was just looked like a worn out hag. And that's what I looked at. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Now, how many times had I looked at that picture since we brought it home? And I can tell you it was a bunch because I was so proud of it. And I had never looked at myself. It was always about them, my family, not about me. And so Kathy said to me, "Irene, it's time we had a talk. It's time you learned that you can't be all things to all children. It's time you had understood that if you can't be good to yourself, you will have very little of value to give to these children." That was my awakening. So is self-care important? Absolutely. Should you feel guilty? I'm not going to lie to you and say I don't feel guilty sometimes still when I practice self-care. But I learned the importance of it. And I think that I've helped others over the years who were going through very much the same thing as me, who looked just as bad as I did. We go to a foster parent meeting and oh my goodness, we were so tired when we have time to fix ourselves up at all. We were just hoping that somebody there could make us feel a little bit better so we'd have a little bit more energy to go back and do it again tomorrow. And that's when I knew I'm not being everything I need to be to this family, regardless of who all lives here, right? So yeah, we're going to have some real discussions on self-care and how not to feel guilty about that. And it won't just be with me. We're going to have some other folks who can come on and really talk to us about some of the things that we need to do and can do, and how we can work them into the amount of time we have available in each 24-hour day, right? And I'm looking forward to that. Sean, don't know how we're doing on time. Okay, how do foster care systems differ across the states? That's almost a loaded question, people. The federal government provides pretty clear usually, and sometimes not so clear guidelines, right? Laws that they've enacted, policies and procedures that are put out by the federal agencies that govern what happens in foster care. And the states then take the responsibility of taking that information and figuring out how to implement it within their own states. Because remember, we are a republic. So the states have a lot of autonomy in how they do things. They take guidance and national law, and then they can interpret things kind of their way, and then they can implement them in various ways. And then to make it even more difficult to understand is some states are state run. So whatever the state bureaucracy says, this is what we're going to do, then that's what everybody in the state's supposed to do, right? And so, of course, various areas are going to do a little different, or who's in charge in those areas might see things a little different, but basically it's all the same. You have some states that are county run. Now, if you're a county run state, oh boy. So California example is a county run state, and I'm not sure how many, maybe 64 counties or something like that. And so when you go into California and you say, let's say I was a reporter and I wanted to find out, well, how are they handling family time, visitation, now with COVID-19 in the pandemic? And believe me, I've had lots of reporters call in the last month. And they'll say, we don't know what to do because everybody's doing it different. Yeah, they are. And have you tried trying to find that out in California? And every time they'll say, it's impossible because they all do it different. And I said, it's right. So if you have 64 counties, you can have 64 different answers on how they're implementing or not implementing something. And so I look at my state, and I live in Texas, 254 counties in this big state. Thank God it's a state-run system, right? Or we'd never be able to function. So when we talk about when we get calls at the office or emails and they say, tell me what to do, can I do this? First thing we have to go back to is, and can you tell me where you're from? Where do you live? Because we then have to respond by saying, we're going to give you the contact information for your state foster or adoptive parent association, and they can probably help you a lot better than we can, because we're not experts on every state, nor are we experts on all the counties in those county-run states. We know a lot about what the federal government says needs to be done. We know what the Children's Bureau is saying needs to be done, and we work very closely with those folks, by the way. But when it comes to your daily implementation of what you can or can't do, what the rules say yes or no to, especially during this time when it seems like every day you get another email saying something's been added or changed, right? That's why we often have to send you and refer you back to your home state for better information than we could possibly have. So I know that can be frustrating for people when they contact us, but we really don't have all the answers. We're not a big enough organization that we can have people on staff who become experts on every state and many counties in this country. Okay, so Sean, how are we doing on time? One more question. Okay, so how do I deal with the uncertainty of fostering? Oh my goodness. That's another one of those that I don't know if there is a right answer. I think there's many answers, because I think each of us handles uncertainty in life differently. And so the uncertainties around fostering kind of take on whatever our personality is and how we respond to uncertainty in the other areas of our life. One thing we know is there will be uncertainty in everything, and every day we don't know for sure what's going to happen next, and we feel like, and we've usually have figured out a way to think things through. For me, it was always, Irene, you're not in this alone. There are experts out there who can help you figure this out. There are many, many foster parents who can help you figure this out. Start doing the brainstorming with them, and because we learned that when we would do that together, then we all benefited, right? Because not only did it help me in my situation, but it would help them when such types of situations would happen in their families as well. So I would love to hear from people, if you don't mind, about how do you handle uncertainties? I think that we could present some of that information on another show and show the creativeness that we all have. Even though sometimes we feel like we're in a rut, what we feel like is a rut might be really innovative for somebody else who hasn't thought of that. And so, I've always told my kids there's no really bad idea. There's just some that make more sense than others. And some that works for you, and some that works for me, and some that won't work for any of us. So I'd love for us all to share some of those things together, and you'll have an opportunity at the end, I think, to put your comments in. Again, like I said a while ago, your questions that you have for future shows and topics that you want to talk about. But certainly share your thoughts about what we've done today, because again, we want to build on what we've started. Okay, I'm thinking that time is about up. I hope you enjoyed this time. It's been a new experience for me, I have to tell you. I've never done anything quite like this before. So bear with me with my uncertainty. This is one of those uncertain times for me. I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth, right? I don't want to lead you astray. But I want you to know that life is good. And what you do every day is truly important. And anything that the NFPA can do to help you continue your work, or to help you to understand maybe sometime that maybe it's time not to do this anymore because you're not being the best you can be, then we'll help you to try to get through that as well. So this is Irene signing off for today, and I hope you'll join us again next week so we can try this again. Thank you.